And it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza. They might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC.
Hey guys, welcome to the Buck Brief. We've got Dovid Efune with us. He's the publisher of the New York Sun. Dovid, big speech from Prime Minister Netanyahu just finished a little bit before you and I sat here to talk about it. What is the primary takeaway you've got from the Prime Minister of Israel speaking to the U.S. Congress?
Well, I think that this could be best described as the most robust and convincing articulation of the value of a watertight U.S. Israel relationship. Going through from top to bottom, obviously the story of Israel, its needs at this time, certainly the value and the special place that the American relationship has in the hearts of Israelis. But beyond that, I think you could title the speech Israel, Defender of America, framing well there how Israel is really the first line of defense against Iranian hegemony and expansionism, and obviously the defense against and the line that stands in between Iranian aspirations in America and attacks on American soil. And, he correctly highlighted just how active Iran has been, not just against American interests, but also against the United States. I mean, that threat against Donald Trump that was spoken of just last week, that was reported last week, but also others on American soil. There was a previous threat, assassination attempt against Mike Pompeo. I mean, he laid it out just as clear as anybody could lay it out that, in fact, in his words, I'll see if I can find the exact language here. We help keep America's boots off the ground while protecting our shared interests in the Middle East. Just highlighting and underscoring the value of this relationship to America and Americans. And, he spoke about the American role in providing armament and weaponry for the U.S. military, for the Israeli military, for the IDF, paraphrasing Churchill there saying, give us the job, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. He said, give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster for those who are worried that this is taking so long. He was hinting there that it's a product of America sort of dilly-dallying on getting the weapons over that Israel needs. Really, in the end of the day, I would say he just made a lot of people look very small. I mean, Nancy Pelosi looks like a little midget, in the wake of just the broad vision, the historical context, and she's, waffling about this and that and making excuses for not showing up.
Do you think that Kamala Harris as president, I mean, let's start from, as presidential candidate, I should say. Do you think that this is causing anxiety in the U.S. Israel relationship? How would you assess, based on where Kamala has been, to the degree that we can know? I mean, she was the most far left senator when she was in the Senate. Now she's been VP for 4 years. What do you think the view of the U.S. Israel relationship would be through the lens of Kamala administration?
Not good. I mean, people were concerned about how it went through a Biden administration. It would definitely be worse. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, look, we saw it today. Half of the Democrats in Congress did not show up. The Democratic Party is split straight down the middle vis-a-vis Israel. And, Kamala represents the wing that didn't show up. She didn't show up today. She didn't make an effort to show up today. I think she may meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu. But the fact that she didn't make this a priority, and it's clear that that's a product of her perceived need to pander to that wing of the party, I think really sets the stage for what this relationship might look like under a Kamala Harris presidency. I don't know what she's thinking. I mean, it's not rocket science to know that if you're trying to win a general election, you should look towards the center. I don't know why she sees pandering to the Rashida Tlaib and the wingnuts, blocking streets in Washington, D.C. today is going to help her politically either. I mean, it's true that there are more Republicans and Democrats that support Israel, but still it's the majority of Democrats, and it's something that that I think is going to come back to haunt the Democrats at ballot time.
Let's talk more about that here in just a moment. But first up, from our sponsor, Porter Stansbury is a friend of mine. I've known him for 10 years. He's an incredible businessman, and he has done something he wants you to know about. This is a guy who cut his salary down to $1 a year, even though he founded and is now the CEO of a publicly traded company that does hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue a year. So why did he do this? Well, because he thinks there's a better way to get paid. He calls it a secret currency, if you will, and he wants you to be in on the know. It's not gold or Bitcoin. Porter says what's interesting is that while every American is legally entitled to use the secret currency, if you know much about it, Porter's hoping to change that. I strongly recommend you check out Porter's latest detailed presentation at secretcurrency2024.com. That's secretcurrency2024.com. He details how to protect and grow your wealth in the years to come using America's new money. Secretcurrency2024.com is the website. Okay, so there's talk of, as you and I are sitting here, Dovid, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, as the vice president for Kamala Harris' ticket. Not confirmed yet. People are saying that he's kind of in the, from the rumors, if you will, or from the early reporting, he's a very likely guy, if not the guy. Is that a move to, would that be a successful move, you think, to bring back some disaffected American Jewish voters for this election? But also, is that a real problem for them in Michigan with the Muslim Democrat voters who are very upset at the Jewish community and Israeli policy, etc.?
I haven't had a look closely at his record or Israel, but I'd consider it as sort of too little, too late move on that particular score. I mean, the question of whether the Jewish vote versus the Muslim vote ends up winning the day in Michigan, I mean, it looks like, frankly, the way the polls are looking right now, that it's not going to be the deciding factor anyway. But it's true that the Muslim vote does outweigh the Jewish vote in Michigan by a significant margin. I think it's 3-1 or 4-1. But the truth is that there are plenty of other swing states, including Pennsylvania, which has more electoral college points, where Jews outweigh Muslims 4-1. And there are sizable Jewish populations in Arizona, in Georgia, in Ohio, obviously in Florida. I don't know if you consider that a swing state anymore, but, in the event that it is. And in all those states, able to make a considerable difference. So if that's the game, win Michigan, but, sacrifice all of the other swing states, it doesn't sound like sound political advice to me, but, if that's what they're thinking, good luck to them.
Is there a sense of still maybe a lingering sense of betrayal of the interests of the Israeli-American relationship and the Jewish community here by Biden, specifically based on his conduct and words after the October 7th attacks, or has that faded? I mean, are we at a point now where people are likely to, within the Jewish community, go back to their likely political proclivities? You know what I mean? Basically like, oh, well, I don't like Biden that much, but I'm going to go back and vote Democrat anyway.
Yeah. I mean, look, time has moved on from the question of Biden. I mean, that's certainly the case. So the question that remains is kind of, where does Kamala Harris sit in all of this? And she hasn't done anything in the last couple of days to help her cause on this score. She's positioning herself as an even worse alternative than her old boss, or maybe still her current boss. Who knows? But certainly, I think what has changed is that I'd say a lot of Jewish Americans feel like the ground has been shaken under their feet, in the wake of October 7th. A lot of things that seem to be matters that you could take for granted. For example, that, life at an Ivy League school would be a pleasant experience for an identifiably Jewish American. Those things are not things you can take for granted anymore. And it's certainly pushing a lot of people in the other direction. I mean, I could tell you anecdotally, I have friends who were hardcore Democrats, who were the biggest supporters of Joe Biden in the last election, who have now become MAGA extremists. And I'm talking about here in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And there are not a lot of MAGA extremists in the Upper West Side, or certainly there wasn't in the past.
I want to ask you, I want to circle back and get an update on where things stand. Netanyahu spoke today, where things stand with the war against Hamas, which is still reported on, but certainly not dominating the headlines the way that it had been. I mean, things have been crazy in the news cycle here for obvious reasons, too. We'll get to that in just a second, but perfect time to tell everybody about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We just had Netanyahu today talking to U.S. Congress about the incredibly important strategic relationship between the United States and Israel, but Hamas terrorists are still at large, and some of those involved in the attacks still have hostages, and this war is far from over, and there's a constant threat that the Israeli people live under. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews partners American Christians with our Jewish brothers and sisters and shows them that they are not alone in Israel, and people care for their safety and care for the future of the Jewish state. Christians like you support Israel through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. It's this support that helps the citizens of Israel remain steadfast and strong. Please visit them at ifcj.org. Again, that's ifcj.org. Status of the war. How are things going in the latest, and where do we stand on the hostages? Just give everyone an update. We haven't talked about it on the show in a while.
I mean, look, one thing is clear, in case anybody hasn't noticed. Israel is really committed to seeing this through. And it's not just politicians or Netanyahu or the right-wing government or this or that. It's the Israeli people. It is not an option for a politician who wants to stay in office to leave Hamas standing. And you can just see in the amount of time that they've committed to this, it really is a whatever it takes attitude. And they're getting a lot better at it as they go. In fact, Netanyahu pointed out that they had killed in Rafah, which was considered, the most dangerous place for the IDF to operate and the place that would likely lead to the most civilian casualties. He was talking about a conversation with a commander where they reported 1,203 Hamas terrorists were killed and 0 or maybe 1 accidental incident where civilians were killed. Israel's gotten better at using drones. They've gotten better at maneuvering around civilian areas. They've gotten better at fighting in tunnels. They've gotten better at protecting APCs and tanks. They've really mastered the terrain. They've innovated, and there's no question that victory is in sight. And you can see that by the fact that Hamas is coming back to the table. So really, it's a matter of time. And Netanyahu hinted at the reason why things are dragging out has a lot to do with supplies. And what my sources are telling me, by the way, is that what you're going to start to see now as a product of America dragging its feet over some of these desperately needed armaments that Israel needs is just a huge incentive for a domestic arms industry to take root in Israel. So you've got great American businesses, defense contractors, and others that are going to lose a lot of business because Israel's going to start making all of its own shells and bullets and anything that they can make themselves so that they don't need to get from America. That's what they're going to do. And frankly, that's also why it's taken them a while to go into Hezbollah, to go into Lebanon to take care of Hezbollah, because they're not convinced that they're going to have the supplies they need. They're going to wait until that defense industry is up and running and is at the level that it needs to be, before taking any further steps. And, I guess the Biden administration thinks they're sort of managing the conflict, but really what they're going to end up doing is just diminish American power and influence over the region significantly and also harm a bunch of American businesses in the process. But I'll say one other thing. I would say that a lot of Americans who watched that speech today, will look at Netanyahu and be envious and say, wouldn't it be nice if some American leaders could speak like that?
I mean, you don't know this. You don't know this. Clay said exactly that on our radio show just before, a little bit before you and I sat down to talk. So, I mean, there is that sentiment.
Talking about winning. I mean, when, winning a war, defeating our enemies, once and for all. Just the amount of time that he spent on acknowledging the sacrifices. I mean, there are 3 or 4 war heroes there that were just remarkable. I mean, one Ethiopian Israeli who he had in the audience on the morning of October 7, he grabbed his rifle. He said he didn't have a car. He ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people. Netanyahu said, killed many terrorists and saved many, many lives. Can you imagine that? Ran 8 miles with his rifle just to be on the front lines. And just taking the time to acknowledge those heroes. I mean, it certainly feels to a lot of Americans like that kind of acknowledgement and, raising up of the heroes who sacrificed just doesn't happen enough in America.
So just to be clear,
a lot of folks would be.
I was going to say, I mean, Israel is taking this all the way. They're going to win this war against Hamas. That's what it sounds like you're telling me.
Yeah, there isn't a choice. There isn't a choice. The whole Israeli people are so unified on this point, and I think this is the way to put it. Netanyahu referenced this when he sort of highlighted the father of an Israeli war hero. The sacrifices will have been in vain. Too many people have died for them not to finish the job. It's like, showing up and having the fire department put out 80% of the fire. I mean, who does that help exactly? People understand this, and the Israeli people will not allow any other outcome. And Netanyahu knows this. There's no way around it. He's got to finish the job. And if he gets voted out, whoever else comes in, they'll have to finish the job. There will be no tolerating of any political leader.
Do you think he might get? Is it realistic that he might get voted out? I mean, I would think there'd be such unity behind him. I know there was some controversy before this all happened, before the attacks of October 7th with Netanyahu, but is there a unity behind him now? Or, I mean, look, Churchill won World War II and ended up getting voted out, right? So, I mean, this can happen.
Right. Yeah, and it'll probably happen. I mean, look, in the end of the day, there are the policies he's enacting, and then there's the person. There's a lot of unity around the policies he's enacting. So as long as he sticks to that until there's another election, I think the government will hold together. But at the end of the day, any politician who's been in office for 14 years, as he has, is going to have a lot of baggage. And that's the nature of democracies. You need to, the door needs to revolve at certain periods in time. But I think today was a reminder for all Israelis and others why that guy is still in office. And, if you get into a taxi in Israel and you ask just a man on the street, what do you think of Netanyahu? The first thing they'll do is they'll start with a curse. He's a liar, he's a bastard, this or that. And then they'll say, Aval in Hebrew, en mishu acher, there's nobody else. There is nobody else in the political echelons of Israel that can do this. They can get up, speak to the world with that kind of confidence and articulate Israel's message in the way that he has. And Israelis recognize that, and they've been willing to put up with a lot of, in whatever it is, political complications, let's call it, in Netanyahu's history or his baggage, in order to have a guy who does the job well,
Excellent. Dovid Efune, everybody. Dovid, thank you so much. Go check out the New York Sun. Dovid's the publisher. They do great work. Become a subscriber over there. Dovid, we'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, Buck.